as you prepare to reflect on the Buddha's teachings tonight, especially on the profound shifts that occur when karma dissolves. Find a quiet space. Lie down or sit comfortably. Let your hands rest softly. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and slowly breathe out. Again, inhale deeply, hold it gently, and release. Notice the air passing through your nose. Feel your body resting. Nothing to prove. Nothing to do. Now, turn your awareness inward. Let the day fall away. Let go of what you wanted and didn't get. Let go of what went right and what went wrong. There is no need to fix, chase, or change anything right now. You are safe. You are whole. You are enough as you are. Let your breath carry you to stillness. Now, as your body softens, as your heart becomes quiet, you are ready. The night is deep and quiet. Even in this hour, when the whole world seems asleep, there's an unwavering weight in your waking mind. Unexplained suffering, the torment of recurring relationships, a seemingly endless sense of despair. This is the trace of past actions, known as karma. The Buddha said, all beings are heirs of their karma. They have karma as their parent, karma as their kin, karma as their refuge. Whatever karma they create, they will inherit its results. This means that the reality we experience is not by chance. Why do we suffer this particular pain? Why are we entangled with certain people? And why do the same situations repeat? The root lies in our karma. However, what's crucial is that this karma is not merely a consequence of the past, but something that can be transformed through present consciousness and practice. In ancient Magadha, India, there lived a young man named Ajahn. He constantly harbored anger towards the world and resented people. Why am I the only one who is poor? Why am I the only one who is unhappy? Then one day, he encountered the Buddha delivering a discourse on the road. The Buddha looked at him and said, your mind is burning. It is not ignited by others. Your karma is burning your mind. Ajahn initially didn't understand, but the Buddha's compassionate gaze and gentle words began to dissolve the deep-seated knots in his heart. He took refuge in the Buddha, observed the precepts, and began a life of self-care, refraining from harming others. Within a few years, he regained a genuine smile and became a respected practitioner among the people. What changed his life was not cutting off past karma, but creating a new direction within the flow of karma. The Buddha did not teach him how to wash away sins. Instead, he showed him how to dissolve karma. This was through the practice of compassion, patience, and unceasing mindfulness. Nietzsche once said, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. If we can find meaning in our suffering, understanding it not as mere punishment, but as a sign of change and a process of karma dissolving, then we can finally move through that suffering. If your life is currently filled with repeated failures and exhaustion, it might be the final heat before your karma completely dissolves. Be patient, observe, do not blame yourself, and simply persevere. The Buddha never said that no one could escape karma. Rather, he said that if anyone genuinely practices, their karma will flow away like water and disappear. This night, if you are weeping, it is not a bad omen. On the contrary, it is a quiet testament that your karma is dissolving, that your soul is undergoing a transformation. Close your eyes for a moment and whisper to yourself, I recognize my karma, and I am dissolving it. King Bimbisara, the great ruler of Magadha, had a deep connection with the Buddha. He was a devout believer in Buddhism, a newly emerging religion at the time, and had vowed to protect the Dharma. Yet, even this virtuous king could not escape the shadow of unavoidable karma. His son, Ajatashatru, consumed by a thirst for power, betrayed his father and imprisoned him. And ultimately, King Bimbisara died of starvation in that prison. His disciples lamented and asked the Buddha, Venerable One, how could such a benevolent ruler, a protector of the Dharma, meet such a tragic end? Then the Buddha recounted a story from a past life. In a previous existence, Bimbisara was born a young man in a village and committed the grave sin of pushing an old man into a well and starving him to death. The neglected old man died in agony without water, and that evil karma manifested as retribution in the current life. After countless cycles of rebirth, the Buddha said, even if no one sees, karma created does not disappear. Like a shadow following its form, its consequences inevitably follow. However, the Buddha simultaneously stated, yet even if a person has committed great evil, they can transform the consequences through continuous practice and meritorious deeds. Indeed, Bimbisara performed countless Buddhist rites and accumulated merit by protecting the Dharma during his lifetime. Because of this, the Buddha taught that he was reborn in the Tushita heaven after death, rather than falling into the Avijji hell. This anecdote asks us, do the consequences of karma inevitably come? Yes, they do. But at the same time, good actions possess the power to mitigate and transform those consequences. The path to dissolving karma lies precisely here. It is not merely about avoiding suffering, but about having the courage to perform good deeds even within suffering. Seneca said, the best way to conquer adversity is to make it meaningful. What you are currently experiencing might be something you created, or a lingering imprint from a long-forgotten connection. But if you can accept it and practice small acts of goodness within it, that suffering can become the flame that burns away karma. If you cannot forgive someone and lie awake at night, that could be karma. If you repeatedly argue in a relationship, the emotions within those arguments could also be karma. But all such karma can gradually dissolve under the light of mindfulness. Even at this very moment, if you are calmly breathing and listening, the transformation has already begun. In the deep of the night, troubling memories quietly resurface. Unspoken wounds, the pain of recurring human relationships, inexplicable loneliness. The root of all these emotions sometimes stems from past karma. The Buddha said, "Evil actions pollute the mind, and good actions purify the mind. One who purifies their mind purifies karma, just as one purifies the ocean." Now, let us follow the life of a woman who recognized her karma and ignited the flame of compassion within her heart to dissolve it. In ancient Savatthi, there lived a woman named Sudara. In her youth, an unthinking remark she made turned a longtime friend into an enemy, and that connection escalated into family discord, causing her prolonged mental suffering. Sudara often thought to herself, "Why do I suffer this pain alone? Why, no matter how kindly I live, is my life not peaceful?" Then one day, she met the Buddha, who was giving a discourse at the Jetavana monastery, and she asked the Buddha, "Venerable One, I have lived carefully, trying not to harm others. Yet my mind is troubled, my relationships are entangled, and suffering repeats. What am I doing wrong?" The Buddha looked at her quietly and said, "You are unable to release the person you hate in your heart. Hatred fuels the fire of karma even more. But compassion is like the dew that dissolves karma." Sudara burst into tears on the spot. She had always thought her suffering originated from external sources, but it was the weight of karma created by the long-held anger, regret, and hatred within her heart. From that day on, Sudara began to distribute warm food to her neighbors on the streets every morning. She prepared small gifts for those who had troubled her and greeted them without any conditions. She understood that this was not merely an act of kindness, but a practice of purifying karma with compassion. At first, it felt awkward and embarrassing, but as time passed, her gaze softened, and her body and mind felt lighter. The Dhammapada states, "A compassionate mind appeases the fire that burns everything. One who conquers anger with compassion saves themselves." She proved those words true. Even such deep-seated karma of hatred could slowly disappear in the face of compassionate practice. The philosopher Kant said, "Only a person with goodwill is truly free." Sudara did not blame external oppression or fate. Instead, she practiced compassion of her own will, thereby freeing herself from the shackles of karma. She showed that the most powerful way to change suffering is not to change others, but to change our own minds. Tonight, do you still hold on to feelings of unforgiveness towards someone in your heart? Or are you perhaps trapping yourself by not forgiving yourself? If so, this night, quietly plant the seed of compassion within yourself. Empathy for others, generosity towards yourself. All these feelings are the first steps to dissolving karma. You have now realized, it is I who create suffering, and it is I who dissolve it. Karma inevitably follows, but changing the weight of that karma is a choice made in this very moment. Close your eyes for a moment and whisper to yourself, "I dissolve my karma with compassion. I will release hatred and practice love. Now, until tomorrow's sun rises, may the warm breath of compassion linger by your side." The darkness deepens, but a small light remains within your mind. like an unextinguishable lamp. It's a trace of countless moments where you sought to protect yourself. Today, we encounter the story of a practitioner who silently walked that path. His name was Channa. He was an attendant to the Buddha and once a figure who faced criticism within the community due to his arrogance. But he ultimately overcame that arrogance and progressed on the path to enlightenment. After the Buddha's parinirvana, the monastic community imposed a severe disciplinary action on Channa, a prohibition from attending the Uposatha, because he had disregarded rules and exalted himself. This was an unbearable pain for a monastic and signified ostracization from the community. But surprisingly, Channa did not resist or make excuses. He quietly reflected on himself, bearing his shame, and began to shed his arrogance, one layer at a time. I failed to see my karma. It plunged me into darkness. He faced his own faults, fully accepting the karmic consequences imposed upon him, and he never neglected his daily practice. He quietly meditated, helped people, and remained mindful of every word he spoke. As time passed, Channa came to understand the meaning of the suffering he endured. It was not meant to break him, but to be a compassionate suffering that allowed him to be reborn. The Buddha had said during his lifetime, suffering can also become a gateway to enlightenment. For one who repents, even if karma does not disappear, its weight lessens. Nietzsche said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." But Buddhism adds another word to this. One who passes through that suffering becomes softer and more compassionate. Channa finally reached that point. He surrendered himself through suffering and rebuilt himself with compassion. After that, he became a practitioner who, from the humblest position, helped others and silently cared for those around him. He did not speak many words, but his silence became a profound resonance. In real life, we experience similar suffering. Unjust evaluations, repeated failures, loneliness understood by no one. Sometimes, it's so unfair that we want to blame the world. However, like Channa, if we can look within ourselves and quietly begin anew from there, that suffering will surely gain meaning. Do not give up on yourself. Even if there's no immediate change, you are already an awakened person. This night, quietly whisper to yourself, I will not lose myself in suffering. I will cultivate my mind in silence. Practice is not about eliminating karma with great power. It is about small awakenings, trivial words, a warm glance towards someone. Every such moment is the true fire that dissolves karma. If your day has been difficult, and you are tired of recurring suffering, that very moment might be the time when the greatest change is approaching. Like Channa, if you do not turn away from yourself and look within until the very end, your mind will surely knock on the door of liberation. Now, until tomorrow's sunlight arrives, let your mind rest, following your calm breath. As the night deepens, the valleys of the mind also grow darker. The world is quiet, but even in stillness, your wavering inner self is not yet completely free from suffering, though that suffering seems to come from outside. Sometimes the deepest wounds begin in the mind. That mind is the gateway to dissolving karma. The Buddha said, The mind is indeed the source of all phenomena. If the mind is pure, actions are pure. And if the mind is defiled, actions are defiled. One who masters the mind conquers karma. Now, I will tell you the story of a practitioner who never lost his mind even amidst the greatest hardships. In ancient Vaishali, there lived a practitioner named Rohitasa. From a young age, he was exceptionally intelligent and had little attachment to worldly affairs. However, the memories of his parents' divorce and poverty in his childhood left an indelible darkness deep within his heart. Rohitasa, after hearing the Buddha's teachings, left home and embarked on the path of diligent practice. He sought to overcome the karma within himself, eating only one meal a day, meditating all day long, and thoroughly observing his mind. But the deeper his practice became, the more intense the emotions that resurfaced within him. Why was I born into such a life? Why did my parents abandon me? He sometimes wept uncontrollably and at other times fell into self-pity, unable to do anything. Then one day, he quietly asked the Buddha, "Venerable One, I have practiced for a long time, but my mind is still wavering. Is my karma too heavy?" The Buddha looked at him for a moment and then said, "Rohitasa, it is not a large hammer that pierces a rock, but countless drops of water. Do not think your karma is heavy. Guard the seat of your mind. Not retreating from that seat is the way to dissolve karma." Those words resonated in Rohitasa's heart, like a drumbeat in a long silence. From that day on, he resumed his diligent practice, no longer clinging to the past. He focused solely on guarding his mind in the present moment. Years later, one day, Rohitasa entered a deep state of meditation. During his practice, and within it, the memories that had tormented him for so long flashed before him. His parents' quarrels, hunger, loneliness, anger, but he simply observed them all. Without judgment, without clinging, he just let them be. At that moment, he felt the karma within him flow away like the wind, and his mind became calmly clear. He realized he did not conquer karma, he embraced and released it. That was the practice of guarding the seat of the mind. As taught by the Buddha, the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "The pain you are experiencing is not something that happened to you. It is merely a reaction within your mind. Change that reaction and the pain will disappear." Rohitasa was a practitioner who put the teaching into practice. He did not try to change the past, nor did he resent others. He focused solely on training and guarding his own mind. That mind became the greatest fire that dissolved karma. Tonight, the suffering you experience may also seem to have no reason. The recurring sorrow and anxiety, the inexplicable emotions, these may be the shadows of karma. But remember, karma does not define your existence. Only your mind can overcome the power of karma. Observe the moment your mind arises. Be mindful of the flow of emotions as they pass. And each time, confirm that you are present in that seat. That is diligence. Now, close your eyes and quietly whisper to yourself, "I guard the seat of my mind. Any suffering cannot shake me. Until the day karma disappears, I will guard my mind." As night deepens, a single unanswered question may linger in your mind, even as you close your eyes in silence. Why am I so exhausted? Why must I endure all this? The answer to that question, at times, is heard more clearly in silence than in words. And in that serene silence, we recall the life of a practitioner. In ancient Rajagaha, deep in the forest, there lived a practitioner. His name was Sanjaya. He was once a thief who had committed great sins. He betrayed people's trust and plundered countless homes out of greed. But one day, while fleeing, he encountered an old monk, whose words changed his life. The old monk looked at him and said, "One who flees is not afraid of sin, but afraid that their own mind will collapse. Yet, if you regain that mind, both sin and mind can rise again." Those words pierced Sanjaya's heart deeply. He bowed his head to the old monk and vowed to follow the Buddha's teachings. Settling in the forest, he diligently cultivated the land every day, prepared food for offerings, and continued his practice of mastering the anger and desires within himself. However, the past was not easily forgotten. Villagers would come and point fingers at him. "That man is a thief who deceived people. No Buddha could ever save someone like him." Those words cut him like knives, and sometimes he had to swallow his tears. But Sanjaya would repeat to himself, "I created my karma, and its shadow is cast upon my life. So now, with this mind, I must eliminate it." He replayed the Buddha's words every morning. In this world, only one who has conquered themselves is a true victor. Conquering others is merely a temporary victory. But one who conquers their own karma and defilements achieves eternal victory. He did not resent. He did not turn his back on those who hated him. He quietly tilled the fields, gave water to small creatures every day, and endured the weight of his karma. Nietzsche said, "He who has been in deep suffering proves himself by the way he endures it." Sanjaya proved this every day. Karma tried to drag him down, but he walked over it, step by step. He did not avoid suffering, nor did he hide his past. He simply centered his life on, "What kind of mind do I cultivate in this very moment?" As time passed, his eyes began to glow. Even those who mocked him eventually bowed their heads to his silence. He finally attained enlightenment and became a practitioner of such dignity that the villagers called him the Silent Saint. Kant said, "Dignity is the most fitting reward for those who have suffered." Sanjaya did not lose himself in the suffering of karma, and ultimately he opened the path of a noble practitioner. He shows us that while the past cannot be changed, the meaning of the past can be renewed by the present mind. Tonight, there is also such a seed of change in your heart. Whatever past you may have had, whatever criticism you may be under, you can restart your life in this very moment. With that calm mind alone, close your eyes for a moment and whisper to yourself, "I guard my mind. I will not avoid suffering, but embrace it with compassion. I will transcend karma and return to myself." May this night be a warm light for your soul. In the next part, I will tell you the story of an old man who practiced until his last breath to dissolve his karma. The Buddha said, just as clouds clear and the sun reveals itself. When karma clears, your life will become peaceful and bright, as if it always was. When the karma of the mind purifies, your connections with people will also open anew. Once, in Rajagaha, there lived a practitioner named Mahayana. He had lived his entire life with a harsh personality, so unyielding in his principles that no one could get close to him. People feared him, and he grew accustomed to being alone. However, he was unknowingly accustomed to loneliness. He did not truly desire it. Deep down, he constantly tormented himself with the thought, "Why am I the only one so alone?" He didn't realize that the sharp aroma of karma he emitted was pushing people away. As years passed, he finally encountered the Buddha's teachings and began to examine his own karma. Every day, he sat in meditation, recalling each thoughtless word he had uttered, each stubborn fixed idea he had clung to, and each cold glance he had given to others in the past. I always strive to be right. Even when I was right, I failed to see that my words wounded someone's heart. Hot tears streamed down his face. For the first time, he genuinely repented. And one day, as he greeted the dawn with prayers of repentance and compassion, an astonishing change occurred. From that day on, people greeted him silently, and children approached him, smiling and saying hello. He realized, as I changed, the world's way of treating me also changed. The philosopher Epictetus said, "Do not seek to change the world outside you. Change your inner attitude. Then the outer world will appear different." This is true. When we dissolve karma, the flow of relationships around us, the fragrance of our words, the softness of our gaze all begin to change. Those we resented and those connections yet to come are all but shadows dancing on the waves of karma we emit. Some people say, "Why do people ignore me? Why don't they understand my sincerity?" But even that sincerity, if hidden beneath layers of karma filled with fear and anger, cannot be felt by others. When your karma begins to dissolve, the following changes occur. Your words become softer, and you no longer hurt others' feelings. Before understanding someone, you begin to empathize with their heart. Perhaps even someone you hated your whole life suddenly evokes pity. Without forced effort, relationships naturally gather around you. This transformation is not grand. It is small and subtle, yet a delicate energy settles upon you that was imperceptible before. Someone helps you. You feel an unusual warmth from a stranger. Problems that seemed unsolvable begin to unravel, like a tangled thread, one by one. This is how the external world responds when karma clears. The Buddha said, "The ways of the world are like samsara, and the way of the practitioner is like transformation. One whose karmic flow transforms, their relationship with the world also renews." Now, let us remember these words. When my mind clears, the world is no longer an enemy. Even those I hated were ultimately my own shadow. As karma clears, my life is filled with clear and warm connections. This is the transformation of the external world that occurs when karma dissolves. You are not alone. As you shed each layer of inner karma, the world is ready to embrace you. The Buddha said, after a long darkness lifts, the first dawn is strange and quiet. In that stillness, you will ask again, who am I? Where am I going? The story begins with a practitioner named Kapila, who devoted 20 years to spiritual practice. His anger had greatly diminished and hatred had vanished. People would say, he looks peaceful now, so much so that a gentle calm settled into his life. But strangely, from a certain day onward, a feeling of emptiness began to creep into his heart. He thought, now that anger, desire, and resentment have disappeared, why is a part of my heart so hollow? His daily life was quiet, without conflict. Yet sometimes he would whisper to himself, why on earth am I walking this path? If everything is impermanent, isn't even practice meaningless? This is not mere depression. After much karma has cleared, when the painful identity that has long defined a person disappears, they wander, unsure what to do with the empty space. If we have lived for a long time with anger, sorrow, and desire, when these vanish, we might even become confused about who we were. The Buddha said, stillness sometimes feels like emptiness, but that emptiness is not to be feared. It is a necessary gateway to pass through, just before encountering your true self. The philosopher Schopenhauer also said something similar. Suffering afflicts man, but the absence of suffering soon brings boredom and emptiness. However, only one who seeks truth in this emptiness can escape both suffering and boredom. These words offer us deep insight. In the place where suffering disappears, your true self and the true reason for your life begin to emerge. The truth within impermanence, the wisdom of non-self, which were previously unseen, now begin to appear. One day, Kapila cautiously asked his teacher, Master, my mind is peaceful, but within that peace, there is an inexpressible hollowness. Is this also karma? The teacher smiled silently and quietly poured him a cup of tea, saying, now you are facing truth, not suffering. That emptiness is not karma, it is truth. That empty space must now be filled with compassion and wisdom. One whose karma is nearing its end inevitably goes through this process. When they no longer hate anyone and no longer blame the world, they finally begin to walk towards truth. Now is the time to ask, what shall I embrace anew, rather than what shall I discard? During this period, you should open your heart to helping others. View life lightly, but embrace responsibility deeply. Fill your mind with small, daily acts of compassion. Learn to see wisdom within impermanence. The Buddha finally said, emptiness is not your enemy. It is the vessel in which enlightenment resides. When the mind is empty, compassion permeates it. That compassion is the true beginning of awakening. Now let us remember these words. A calm mind may initially feel like emptiness. Do not fear that emptiness. Truth resides there. When karma clears, life becomes peaceful. But afterward, it must be filled with compassion. The Buddha said, one who has mastered themselves by their fragrance drenches the world. A flower releases its fragrance to the wind, but virtue transcends the wind. Nirajagriya, there lived an old practitioner named Arna. In his youth, he had lived in extreme poverty and anger, but through decades of practice, he had removed anger, greed, and all attachments from his mind. Now, he was a man of few words, but his gaze was clear and calm like a deep pond. People would spontaneously fold their hands when they saw him, and children would sit by his side and fall asleep. He spoke little, his steps were light, and his eyes always held a calm as if gazing at a distant star. People called him the fragrance without fragrance, because even when he did nothing, simply being near him brought a sense of peace. A person whose karma has completely cleared transforms into a being not for themselves, but for others. They no longer seek to gain anything. Instead, every moment of life becomes an act of giving. Compassion is not merely pity or sympathy. It is selfless love, unrequited care, the capacity to accept existence as it is. The Buddha said, "True compassion is not for the sake of helping those who suffer, but to be with them, understanding their suffering." The philosopher Kant said, "Treat humanity, whether in thine own person or in that of any other, in every case as an end with all, never as means only." This one deeply resonates with Buddhist compassion. A person whose karma has been extinguished does not merely help others. They view them as an integral part of living beings, sharing existence. For them, another's suffering is their own suffering, and another's joy is their own joy. When a great famine struck Rajagrha, Arna distributed all his grain. He went hungry for days, watching others eat their fill, and said, "When people are full, their hearts soften. That soft heart is the door to truth." He did not memorize any scriptures, nor did he debate any doctrines, but people called him a Buddhist disciple because his life itself was the Buddha's teaching. After karma disappears, what we must first face is the suffering of others. Previously, that suffering might have felt burdensome, but from this stage, the power to embrace suffering without avoiding it emerges. The life of one whose karma has clear changes in these ways. Words are few, but each word carries sincerity. Actions are simple, but contain thoughtfulness. One is not lonely when alone, and at ease when with others. One prioritizes the peace of others over their own joy. The Buddha speaks again. A lotus blooms in muddy water, yet is not stained by the mud. Likewise, a compassionate one, though in the world, is not stained by it, and purifies that world with the compassion they possess. For us to dissolve karma is not merely to reduce suffering. It is to transform into a person who can embrace the suffering of others, and ultimately, to move from a life lived for oneself to a life lived for all. Now, let us remember these words. One whose karma is complete comforts the world in silence. That compassion is conveyed not through words, but like a fragrance. Compassion is soft, comforting, and quietly purifies the world. The Buddha said, "Just as a river, upon reaching the ocean, abandons its name, so too does one who is enlightened abandon the self, and transcends birth and death." Once, in a quiet forest near Savatthi, there lived an old practitioner. His name was Vimla, meaning spotless one. In his youth, he had practiced by the Buddha's side. And over many decades, greed, anger, and ignorance gradually vanished from his mind. When villagers saw him, they would instinctively fold their hands, and children would sit by his side and fall asleep. He spoke little, his steps were light, and his eyes always held a calm, as if gazing at a distant star. Then, one day, he quietly told a village child, "Before the sun sets tomorrow, I will leave this body, but I will not disappear. Rather, just as water rises back to the sky, I am moving beyond the flow towards freedom. This is liberation, without any pretense or emotional turmoil. Life becomes a complete cycle, no longer swayed by the waves of birth and death. This is not the grave of emotions, but the birth of freedom," the Buddha said. "For one whose karma is finished, and all craving is extinguished, there is no more rebirth." The philosopher Nietzsche said, "Can you live your life over and over again for 1,000 times?" The moment one stands before that question, one sees the deepest truth. The Buddha opened the path to escape this repetition. The dissolving of karma is not merely about escaping suffering. It is also the process of opening the door to freedom from birth and death itself. On Vimala's last day, he quietly walked into the distant forest. His body was old, but his eyes were clear like stars. A disciple who was by his side asks, "Master, how do you feel now?" He smiled gently and said, "It is like all winds have ceased, and the ocean has become calm, with the serene sky reflected within it. There is no more path to go, but I still do not cease walking. Why? Because truth, while not moving, guides everything. One whose karma is complete fears not even death. Death is not an end, but merely the calming of a quiet wind. The cycle of rebirth, samsara, is no longer a bondage. Instead, it quietly blossoms like a lotus flower, leaving behind its fragrance. In the final stage of karma, the changes we experience are like this. One does not distinguish between life and death. One is not bound by anyone, yet is connected to all beings. Joy and sorrow are accepted simply as conditions and do not linger. One dwells in the world, yet is not stained by the world. The Buddha speaks again. One who embraces compassion and practices wisdom, having left the cycle of birth and death, is like a fish that, without leaving the water, crosses the river. Our journey through this long path is not solely for the purpose of eradicating karma. It is to move towards the freedom beyond, the compassion beyond, the complete stillness beyond. Now, let us remember these final words. Karma disappears, the mind is still. Existence is free, and life becomes clear. One who has crossed the river of samsara, even if they do not return, remains everywhere. There is no more path to go. However, one still walks. Why? Because compassion does not cease walking. I sincerely wish that your path is filled with light and peace. Thank you.